To be able to introduce nation. In this one moment, it's almost incomprehensible that they can exist right now.
And we are grateful.
So close.
Trigger warning. This podcast is intended for men. Not boys, not babies, men.
This is how we disable toxic masculinity.
We need to kill all men.
This pagan patriarchalism that is coming back out of the shadows.
Feminists hate patriarchy.
It's the woman that runs the show and the woman that runs the community and is the backbone of that area.
I'm a nasty woman. A loud, vulgar, proud woman.
Patriarchy. Male privilege. Are you saying you have authority over me? Go get your superior.
I personally can't see why egalitarianism would be a bad thing.
The assumption that wives should make babies instead of money is part of the patriarchy.
Don't say hi to strange women you don't know.
Patriarchy. The patriarchy.
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 Deliver those who are being taken away to death, and those who are staggering to slaughter, oh, hold them back. That is Proverbs 24:11. You are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network, and you are listening to The Patriarchy. My name is Tony DePani, and I am joined by my co-host, Pastor Joseph Randall Spurgeon.
Woman, get back in here and make me a sandwich.
Joseph, what sandwich are you eating today?
All right, so you know that how they have a BLT?
Yes.
Okay, what happens if you just get rid of the B and the L and you only have... Oh, no.
You're eating a tomato? What the heck?
Well, I totally messed that up. I actually was saying what happens if you get rid of the L and the T.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds better to me.
It sounds more manly.
Yes, it does. I was kind of wondering, oh, great, we're patriarchy goes vegan.
Yeah, so I got rid of the L and the T. I don't have any bread. It's just bacon on top of bacon. That counts as a sandwich, right?
Yes, it does. I vote for that. I actually have eaten bacon sandwiches before, which is just toasted bread and bacon. My wife thinks it's really weird, but I say it's really good. All right, I am eating, it's not very complicated. It's fried bologna, white bread with some mayo. And I know some people think that's disgusting, but it's good. It's really, I don't like normal bologna, but man, if you fry it, it tastes really good. So that was not made by my wife, but that was made by me because my wife thinks it's strange too.
I got a friend who goes out of his way to go to this one restaurant in Louisville that makes fried bologna sandwiches.
It's good stuff, man. I mean, it's terrible for you, but it's really good stuff, though.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have another fine installation of our segment, Feminism Ruins Everything.
Feminism ruins everything.
This comes to us courtesy of Meghan McCain.
I talk a lot about feminism. I think a lot about feminism. It's sort of an in vogue term right now. The first wave of feminism focused on the right to vote. Second wave in the 60s was pretty much on equal pay and reproductive rights. I think there should be a third wave of feminism where if you want to be a stay-at-home pro-life mom, that's just...
Wait, I thought we already had a third wave of feminism.
Well, to call it a wave is just a... I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of more like urine, sneaking out on the ground, but it could be, it's liquid. It could be a wave. Anyway, let's see what she says.
This is accepted as being a hardcore CEO Sheryl Sandberg style, and I just don't understand why women can't support each other and want economic equality with men.
But do you believe sort of that the hard right conservative position, which is you have to be pro-life, that's basically telling women what to do? Do you think that that's a feminist position?
telling women what to do. I just think I am a pro-life woman. I said this on the show and it shocked our viewers. I don't want to police other women what to do because I believe that if we repealed Roe versus Wade in this country, abortions would still happen back alleyways. I don't like telling anybody what to do, but I don't understand why it's such a hard idea for sort of hardcore feminists to reconcile that a woman like me can also consider themselves a feminist.
So here's the thing. There's a lot to unpack there. For one, she says I'm a feminist and I'm pro-life, and then the other, the guy was like, yeah, that's such a hard right position. That's really far to the right. And I'm like, you haven't met some people, have you?
Yeah, you need to get outside your door, brother. Yeah.
And then she's like, oh yeah, I'm pro-life, but I don't want to control anybody. If in fact she's basically saying, I don't even want to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. She
I guess she is pro-life then.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Ooh, that'll trigger some people right away. We see all of our viewer count go down. Oh, well. Yeah, she pulls out the often actually cited argument of pro-choice people as well, although it is becoming more and more common with pro-life people to bring up the back alley abortions. We're going to go back to women just lying dead in the street everywhere and blood's flowing all over, which is so ridiculous, actually. That never even happened. Yeah, I'm sure. I think he had a handful of women that went and killed themselves prior to 1973 doing some back alley thing somewhere. But it's not like we had bodies flowing in the streets like it's some giant epidemic. And also, her premise of it's ridiculous. So if rape were legal and then we can't make rape illegal because rapists will get hurt. They'll get hurt trying to rape people. I mean, it's just so stupid.
And so we need to actually pass laws, is what you're saying, Tony, to make rape safe.
Like safe, legal, and rare, right? That's what we said.
And the same thing with theft. I actually think there should be laws where people have to keep pillows underneath their windows in case a thief were to get in. He doesn't need to hurt himself getting into your house. It's got to be safe.
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, because we have to protect them from themselves while stealing our stuff, because that makes complete and utter sense, and that's totally justice right there.
Yeah, and there's always these tropes that they get thrown out. The health of the woman issue. Believe it or not, there was this clinic escort in Louisville. We call them death escorts, who I ended up having a lengthy conversation with, and she encouraged me to read this book on. It's called something like Reproductive Justice in Kentucky, and so I actually bought the book and I've read it. And it's very interesting that this is pre-Roe v. Wade. They were looking for cases of women's health, like for women needing to get an abortion or they'll die. And they were having a very hard time finding it. And they're admitting this in the book, like that this is not actually happening on the scale that they want to trot it out as. They always trot this out as the reason that we have to make the slaughter of little children legal. And even prior to Roe v. Wade, with less advances in medical care, it was not there. So anyways, here's Meghan McCain. Says she's pro-life, but she's just personally pro-life, right? Doesn't really, basically she's still pro-abortion. Can you imagine, Tony? I personally don't believe that little children should be abused, but I don't want any laws to stop the sexual abuse of children.
Yeah, the disconnect that's infesting the pro-life movement right now is astounding. That we can't connect the fact that you're still a human being in the womb, past with your human being outside the womb, and that we don't want to offend anybody, and we don't want to look like bigots, or we don't want to look intolerant. We don't want to, we don't want anybody to be angry with us. Can't we all just get along? And then you just start losing all of your convictions because you compromise everything, and in the process, without even really thinking that you set out to do it, you end up advocating for keeping abortion legal.
Yeah, and then you're trying to do it by this. You see that here, we're feminists, we're pro-women, we're feminism. can we be a feminist too and still be pro-life? That's the kind of the questions they're asking. And it's this idea of like trying to beat something with the very same thing. Feminism is what given us abortion. We can't defeat abortion with feminism, with an overturning of God's rule and God's created order. I think I said this recently, that liberals are afraid of conservatives, and that because they think that conservatives are evil, and so they're afraid of the actual conservative ideas. They're afraid of those things. But conservatives are afraid of liberals, and by that I mean they're afraid a liberal won't like them.
Yep, exactly.
And so they try to do everything in their power to be liked. And so here we are, pro-life feminists. We're pro-women. Women are the victims. The abortion doctors are the victims. The president of Planned Parenthood is the victim.
Yep.
It's like abortion is the one act on the planet that is gruesome and wicked, in which no one is responsible.
Well, even the way that we, in the pro-life movement, I mean, it's probably no secret to anybody listening that we're abolitionists or immediatists, whatever have you. I don't care which title you give it. But in the pro-life movement, you even see that they all the buildings they open, right? Crisis pregnancy centers. Even in the name, crisis pregnancy center. Like, how many pregnancies are actually truly a crisis? I would argue, though, that it's only a crisis for the baby if the mother wants to kill the baby. But they act like every time a woman gets pregnant and it's going to somehow inconvenience her. Because, by the way, even if you go by secular pro-abortion statistics, the top, I think, 2 or 3 reasons amount to it's going to affect my life financially, it's going to change my job, and something along those lines. And that's not a crisis. That's just a life change. It's not a crisis. And I hate the name Crisis Pregnancy Care Center. I really... Absolutely. It's probably a whole other episode on CPCs. But even in that, it just reflects the fact that we're so disconnected from the reality of abortion.
Yeah, I mean, because we've talked about previous episodes, children as blessings. Maybe we ought to open up blessing pregnancy centers.
Right? Yeah. Actually, I think those are called homes, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, and that's why I just laugh at it, because it's like if you look at it the way it is, it's just called a family. It's called a household.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe we can open up like a place and call it like real Planned Parenthood. Or God plan. See, that's the kind of thing that we're actually talking against, right? Trying to be cuter,
clever,
and
winsome,
sneaky, and clever and like sneaky. And that's what happens when feminism kind of creeps in and it undermines the thing. And so what we want to talk about really is that abortion is not a feminist issue. It's not just a woman's issue. This is an issue for men. And we're called the patriarchy. This is an issue for the patriarchy to handle.
Yeah, I mean, if we're saying men need to lead and need to lead in all areas of life, it's astounding to me that we have almost entirely, I think, given this fight over to women, and really even just over, not just to women, but we've given it over to unbelievers, we've given it over to the Catholic Church, we've given it over to basically everybody other than who should be leading it. Yeah.
God calls men to be those who protect others. He's given us strength. The part of the reason he's made our bodies with more muscular mass is to protect our families, protect others. And that verse that you read at the top of the episode, Proverbs says, rescue those who are being taken away to death. Hold back those who are stumbling to the slaughter. And if you say that we did not know this, doesn't he who knows your heart know it? Right? God knows that you know it. And that's the call of Scripture to men is to protect the weak and the needy. And, you know, there's a whole lot going on about justice, talking about justice in in the church. There's fights over the issue of social justice and a lot of weirdness there. But the one thing that's not actually being talked about in these big circles is real biblical justice, protecting those who are innocent and blameless from actually being destroyed, being killed. You know, there's this conference called T4G. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have.
So it was last year. I got invited to go to it. It was in Louisville. And here's this big conference center. Christians, pastors from all over are here. And what the big deal, the big hoopla this last year was how much they talked about the issue of social justice. And we were just like hammered and like shamed if we don't own up to our white guilt, right? And all while that is occurring, less than a block away, Tony, children were being killed, and not one peep.
I remember
there were thousands of Christians and not one peep.
Yeah, and I know where that is too, because I remember when I visited you down there too. So I know exactly how far away it is, and it's just a short little walk.
And so, as we encourage men to be about being men, then men need to start to have their eyes open up to what's going on around us. We live in the midst of a Holocaust, and we need to have our eyes open to it and not closed. We specialize in America in keeping our eyes closed. I think there's this. You ever heard that phrase? See something, say something. And it kind of freaks us out because it kind of sounds a little big brotherish, kind of like a tyrant, right? But the problem, we don't need to worry about anybody saying something because we've all collectively agreed to not see something. And what we've collectively agreed to not see is little children being ripped from the mother's womb and discarded in the trash as worthless pieces of garbage, rather than as image bearers of God.
And that other verse that you read out of Proverbs, it comes right after the verse I read at the beginning of this episode. And I feel like it's really important to what we're talking about because it tells us as believers that we're not going to be able to stand before a righteous and sovereign God one day and tell him that we lived in a nation that murdered over 3,000 of its own people every single day for over 4 decades. Something that we talk about in every presidential debate, we talk about on news syndicates on both sides, and we even have places called Planned Parenthood around the corner from where we eat and worship and work, and yet somehow we didn't know it was going on, and so we did nothing. There's not an adult American in this country right now that doesn't know what abortion is and that it's going on. We're not going to get that excuse. And the other thing that I don't think God's going to allow is the excuse that we make for women who have abortions, which is this huge prevalent excuse right now in the pro-life movement, which is that everybody that gets an abortion is a victim. You can't call up a place, schedule an appointment, drive yourself down a few days later, sign papers, wait in the waiting room, go to another room, lay there while somebody rips your baby apart inside of you, then pay for it when you're done, and go home and claim you're a victim. Because you're not. What you've done is murdered your child, and that makes you a murderer. And it's not like I say that with glee. I don't want anybody to murder their child. But it happens over 3,000 times every single day around us. And trying to soften that and pervert justice by saying that people do that are not murderers, but they're victims, and people have even made the argument that they're as much a victim as the child that they murdered, which is the most astoundingly stupid statement I've ever heard. But I think part of this stems from, at least in the church, maybe, that we want to view women the way they should be. You know, we want to view them as good moms, as kind and gentle ladies, as nurturing, you know, people like they should be. But we can't live in a fantasy land and deny that that's not the case.
And the truth is, women are fallen and sinful, and they need the grace of God. And there are women that go to these places who are ready there, and they know exactly what they're doing. The very first time I went to the abortion mill and stood outside of it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks after we had our first baby. So my oldest daughter, holding her in my arms, she's like a month old or maybe younger. You know, you're just looking down. Being a first-time parent, like, is mind-blowing. By the time you have your fourth or fifth kids, it's still mind-blowing, but it's you're used to it a little bit. But that first one, you know how it is. Mm-hmm. You're just mesmerized by everything, and you're actually afraid if you like breathe on them wrong, you might break them. Right. And so, but there's something precious. And then I go from there to the abortion mill, and my eyes are like as big as a silver dollar, and I'm like freaking out. All these women coming in, I've never seen anything like that. And the very first woman that comes in just comes in, F this, F you all, I'm here to F and murder my baby. What are you going to do to stop me? I'm going to cut its parts off and just throw it away, and you can't stop me from doing this. And my heart was just like, what? I'm broken, because I had believed this idea that all the women were victims, and they were ignorant of what they were doing. Like, they had no clue.
Oh, and I did too. I absolutely. My first experience at an abortion mill was in Chicago, and it was before my daughter was born. She was still in my wife, and we had went to go see her at 8 weeks, 8 or 9 weeks for ultrasound. And the doctor, after doing the ultrasound, we were, again, first-time parents, you're super excited. I get to see my baby on ultrasound. And the doctor asked if we wanted to test for Down syndrome. I had no idea why. I do now. And I asked him why. And he said, in case you want to terminate the pregnancy. And my wife immediately got upset. And I got upset. And I was in disbelief that he even said that he even offered it. Because this was at like a very nice, reputable, huge hospital in Chicago. We didn't go to an abortion mill. We went there because we wanted our baby. And I think I asked him a few times what, because I just couldn't believe it. And he kept saying, terminate. And I eventually, I think, told him to shut up. And then I believe I got up right after that. And I do remember exactly what the room looked like. And I do remember the look in his eyes. And he looked very afraid because I think that's the moment when I stopped being a father and started being a dad. And I basically chased him out of the room, and then not longer after, I decided I wanted to go to an abortion mill, and I went to like the biggest Planned Parenthood there. And over the course of the next few years, I go to others, and yeah, I was totally had bought the line that all women were victims, that they had been coerced into doing this, they didn't know what they were doing, that all they just needed is somebody to come and love them and offer help, and that's what would, turn everyone away. And I'm like, well, I can do that. And yeah, whoa, was I surprised, and not in a good way. Like you, I was horrified. I mean, as a man, I was truly horrified at the people going in, and that included the men going in too. I didn't understand why they were just going along with their girlfriends or wives or whoever. And yeah, it's a horrifying thing. It's one of those experiences, especially the first time, that you will never forget in a horrible, horrible way. It just kind of burned into your memory.
Yeah, and so we have to, Tony, we have to be truthful about what occurs there. We can't cover it up with euphemisms. We can't, always just try to play that they're the victim. Now, is there a possibility that they may be a victim? Certainly. People can be victims. They can be victims of abuse, of abusive relationships. And in many ways, we've all are victims of other people's sin. And this is not to downplay that, but this is to say, what I'm about to say is that you can be a victim and then use your victimhood to make you into the very thing that you are most afraid of. You can take your victimhood and turn it in, use it in a way that it makes you the aggressor. So being a victim doesn't necessarily make you innocent if you then turn around and commit murder. And so we have to be very truthful. Cutting your baby into pieces while it's in the womb and discarding it is murder. It is the destruction of a human being. I got this quote here. I wanted to read to you, Tony. I thought you would find it interesting. This is from Saint Basil the Great. So this is in the church history. And I love to look back at church history and see how they handled the things. Here's what he says. He says, a woman who deliberately destroys a fetus is answerable for murder. And any fine distinction between its being completely formed or unformed is not admissible among us.
I've actually used that quote. A couple of my pastors have asked me a few times to speak to classes in our church on abortion, and of which I always tell them, you do understand how this is going to go, because I use words like murder, sin, repentance, and they're like, yeah, that's why we want you to do it. And I've used that quote, and it is astounding. If you go back and read in church history, all of the early church, all the way on up until just very recently, always condemned every method of abortion and taking potions, chemicals, stab, whatever it might be. And was it Basil who led his congregation out to the infanticide walls and I think ripped them down, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think it was him. Yeah. So this is something the church has taught. We need to continue to teach. This is a thing where the men need to be involved. And we can't be ashamed of the patriarchy and try to be feminist in this. Feminism will not defeat feminism. What will defeat feminism is, first of all, the gospel of Jesus Christ. And the gospel teaches us to live lives that are pure and holy. It teaches us that men are to lead their families and homes, and that men are to seek justice.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be on the line with Marcus Pittman. You may recognize his name from the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. He is the host of Law and Prophets, but more importantly to this episode, he is also the director and producer of the documentary Babies Are Murdered Here and the upcoming Babies Are Murdered Here Too. So stick around. You are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network, and you are listening to The Patriarchy. We'll be right back.
I don't have any more energy left. My knees are gone, my back's gone, but my captain hasn't relieved me of my duty yet.
The first movie we did with you, we didn't really introduce you any. We just played your second.
Well, you know the story behind that, right?
No.
Well, 2 days before you release it, I don't even know that I'm in a documentary. And so what had happened was Bobbie McCreary, I think it was, he gave me a compliment, and it was like out of left field. And I was like, well, Bobbie, I appreciate the compliment, but in reference to what? He goes, you don't know? I go, know what? He goes, you're in a documentary. And I go, is that right? And I had no clue. And that was right after that, both you and John Speed contacted. Oh yeah, by the way, we took your sermon and we used it as the framework for this documentary. And honestly, brother, the fruit that's come from that has just been amazing, just amazing.
The focus on the pro-life movement among young people has never been religiously based, and this is where the media really do lie.
This is not religion. This is raw, basic, uncontrovertible science.
It is pro-lifers that want a separation of church and state.
No one in the pro-life movement, no legitimate, fully recognized and organized pro-life organization, pro-life person that I know, no right-thinking pro-life person has ever intimidated me with the thought of women who've had abortions being murderers.
In these circumstances, you think we should be able to kill humans in the womb?
I think so, yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
The pro-life movement has a lot of women who've had abortions, and they very much argue that the mother is also a victim.
It's like no one's responsible for abortion except the abortion doctor.
Right. And sometimes not even the abortion doctors.
I know what it's like to feel incredibly betrayed by them. That's what I saw in her.
You don't just rebel. You don't have a peasants' revolt and start burning down the castle. Instead, you have your lower magistrates interpose themselves. That principle is one of the key principles of Reformation. The pro-life cause is best served at the local level rather than simply at the national level. But we're not going to win the battle there if we don't win the battle at home first.
We are on the line with Marcus Pittman. Marcus is a filmmaker. He is the host of the show Law and Prophets right here on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. He attends Apologia Church. He is the producer and director of the documentary Babies Are Murdered Here and the upcoming sequel, which you just heard the trailer to. And he is married to his wife, Laura. Marcus, welcome to the Patriarchy.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here among all the testosterone.
So, Marcus, we wanted to have you on your show. We know you're making a sequel to a great big Christian hit. So, how is The Passion of the Christ #2 coming along?
It's going really good. There's going to be no Second Commandment violations.
Oh, good.
It's going to be really great.
That's going to be an interesting one to make then.
It's a creative challenge, but I'm getting through it.
That's awesome. Well, we wanted to have you on because both Joseph and I have been abolitionists or mediatists or whatever our audience would like to call us for actually longer than we've known each other, and we've both kind of been in the abortion fight for quite a few years now, in different parts of it, and some in the same parts. And so we have both watched and have appreciated your documentary "Babies Are Murdered Here," and we're very excited for the upcoming Babies Are Murdered Here 2. We're also friends with John Speed and Rusty Thomas. We've had Rusty on the show, so a lot of crossover there as far as in our worlds. But we wanted to have you on to talk about this documentary so all of our listeners can kind of tune into that and look forward to it. So I guess to start us out, tell us a little bit about why you made the first Babies Are Murdered Here to begin with.
The first one was kind of by accident. I just went, John Speed actually asked me to go and film a video for his church, and so I went up there on the weekend on a Friday to New York, and he accidentally got the plane ticket to return on Sunday morning instead of Sunday evening. He got the AM instead of the PM time, and so I wasn't able to be there when his church was actually filming, so I wasn't able to make a video for it. And so I was like, well, what are y'all doing on Saturday? And he's like, well, we're going to the abortion clinic. So we went to the abortion clinic, and before we went to the abortion clinic, this guy by the name of Robert Gray made this sign that said "Babies Are Murdered Here," and I was like, wow, that's a really powerful image for some reason. It just really stood out. And so with that, that's how the movie came together, pretty much. And so we just asked for we raised money, and we got $5,000 in donations to make it, which was nothing, and made zero profit on it whatsoever. and we just took every donation that we got. We just got, on a plane somewhere and went to go see John Barrows, went to go see other people, and so that's how the first movie came about, really.
So what kind of impact has that movie had? I mean, I remember watching it actually, I think right after I started going to the abortion clinic. It may have been like a week or two after, and it just really kind of helped fuel me. So what impact have you actually seen in your own life and beyond having made the movie?
Well, I think before the movie came out, there wasn't really a lot of reformed folks involved in the abortion fight. Like it just wasn't like really a thing. And I think the people that I interviewed in it were involved, and they were going to abortion clinics and stuff like that. But they weren't, like, they were just like a few people that just did it, and they were kind of like, they were known in the street preaching community for doing that and stuff. And so that's how, you met a few of them or whatever. But it wasn't like a big thing. I mean, like, when the movie came out, just the fact that we used the word murder when describing abortion was a big deal. Like, there were people complaining about that. And so, like, now it's way more commonplace, but it wasn't when that movie came out 5 years ago. That wasn't like part of the language that was used. And so that's pretty significant now, is that pretty much at any major abortion clinic in the country, I feel like there's some reform people out there every now and then now, which wasn't the case before. And then also the signs, the Babies Are Murdered Here signs, became like so popular that Planned Parenthood went and did a marketing campaign to respond to it that said healthcare happens here instead of babies are murdered here. And so they never admitted that it was a direct response, but it was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And so that's fantastic, because like, for a movie that cost $5,000 to move a multi-billion-dollar organization like Planned Parenthood to respond to you like that it's pretty great. So it's real David and Goliath stuff right there.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, all right. So what led you to make the sequel? And why don't you tell our listeners, if they don't know, what the sequel is going to be about?
So let's see, sometime last year, I quit Apologia, and I just got married. So I got a job, working with a social media company. And I was still attending Apologia, and I saw that Zach Morgan started going to the city council meetings, and he was like addressing people, and I was like, whoa, man, that's like just like awesome. And for me, like, everything clicked with that. It was like, well, that's what the next Babies Are Murdered Here should be about. Like, if the next Babies Are Murdered Here is about anything, it should be about Christians rising up and going to the city council meetings and speaking to the local government. And so that was kind of like the start of it. And I pitched it to Jeff and Luke, and they agreed. And so that's how now I'm just doing the movie now. So it's been great. So,
Marcus, the trailer just came out for your new movie. Just came out today. Saw it. I think you said it already actually has more views than the trailer for the first movie had in its whole time. Is that right?
Yeah, the trailer for Babies Are Murdered Here, the first trailer on YouTube, has 15,000 views, and it was released 6 years ago. And then on Facebook, the trailer for Babies Are Murdered Here has, it's not telling me, but it was at just a few hours ago. It was only at already at 13,000.
All right, so you're gonna pass the number in one day.
Oh yeah, for sure. But for the past 6 years.
And I think that shows the success probably of the first movie in a nutshell. Really, is how much people are looking forward to this next one and the work that's been done from that first movie. So, but coming back to the trailer also seems to be you're going to be exposing some of the pro-life movement. And tell us a little bit about that.
So if we're going to talk about how Christians are going to be involved in local government, we need to show them what not to do and what not to fight for. And so the best way of doing that is going to the pro-life lobbyists and the organizations and that have been in the fight for the past 46 years, and to show what they've been doing and how they got it wrong. And a lot of that is ecumenicalism. They very clearly deny the need to preach the gospel. When doing abortion ministry, they very clearly deny that it's not about religion. It's just about, whatever human decency is or whatever, right? So there's no real Christian worldview involved in babies in the fight to end abortion. So, we were at the National Right to Life, and we were at this, I guess I called it the Pro-Life Con, but it was by the Family Research Council, I believe it's what the Family Research Council, and they were saying that when they were making Abby Johnson's Unplanned movie, that they had they had an atheist, a Muslim, a Catholic, and a Baptist all praying together.
Is that like a joke?
It's like the
he was absolutely serious.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he was absolutely serious. He's like, that's how I knew God's hand was on this, because you had all these people, all the over praying, and I was just like, are you serious?
Wow.
Like this, these people, they don't have any clue. And so we got to go to, it was 2 years ago, we went to the National Right to Life Convention, which was in Wisconsin at the time, and we got press credentials, and they let us interview anybody we wanted. And so we got to interview the president of the Pro-Life National Right to Life, the president of National Right to Life. Her name is Carol Tobias.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to interview this other lady named Olivia. I miss her last name, but she's in the trailer too. So Olivia, and they were very, very, they're not just saying that they're not a Christian organization. They're bragging about it in a way that makes it like they're boasting in the fact that they're not a Christian organization. Like they feel that they would be a weaker movement if they held to some sort of Christian standard.
Let me ask you, why is that a bad thing?
Why is it a bad thing to not be a Christian organization?
Yeah. For why can't we be ecumenical and bring in the atheists and the Satanists and the gays and everybody to end abortion?
Because ultimately the foundation of ending abortion requires repentance. And it requires an understanding that abortion is objectively wrong. And so the other thing too is that, for example, like when the Catholic Church, they make laws that are based on a Catholic worldview. So one of the things that they won't do is they won't say that a woman is a murderer who has an abortion. And the reason, we've actually found this out making the first movie, the reason they won't do that is because in the Catholic Catechism itself, it states that if a woman, well, not just a woman, if an individual murders somebody in such a way that they were a victim, so for example in self-defense or something like that, then they're not guilty of a cardinal sin, right?
Yep.
So that's what it says in Catholic Catechism about murder. This is not a cardinal sin if the person's a victim. So they really hold on to that language that the woman who is having an abortion is not a murderer. She's a victim of whatever her circumstances are, because that way they don't have to excommunicate every single person that ever has an abortion. So there's a lot of refusal to call a woman a murderer because of the theological ramifications that it has. by the Catholic leaders who are running, the pro-life lobby group. So, like, there is no neutrality when you're dealing with this thing. And then ultimately, that this country isn't going to end abortion unless we repent and trust in Christ alone. And then God will bless our nation with that.
So years back, I can't remember which year it was. I believe it was, 2015 or 16. I was in Oklahoma with Joe Silk when he first put that bill out. And then after that, I think the year after that, I co-wrote an amendment to the Ohio Constitution to basically a similar type deal to end abortion without any exceptions. And I found very quickly in both those circumstances, so if people are listening and they're just not believing that the pro-life movement is kind of against actually ending abortion, it is. I found out firsthand experience, and that's why I want people to watch this documentary, that they with the moment you start saying that it's murder, the moment you start bringing actual Christianity and the gospel into it, they shut you down real quick. So can you talk about real quick a little bit of what you would say to people that right now, maybe they're listening and their mind's kind of blown. They're like, what are you talking about? How can the pro-life movement not be the answer to ending abortion? And if it's not, what is?
Yeah, so the pro-life organization, they've had 46 years to end abortion. 46 years, or however many years it's been since Roe v. Wade, right? So they've had all this time. Now they'll claim that, well, we just don't have a Supreme Court. Well, under Reagan and Bush, we had a Congress, and then we had a Senate. They were all conservative, and the presidency, they were all conservative. They put in pro-life judges, and still nothing ever. We had the Supreme Court was pro-life majority, and still they spent during that time, instead of trying to end it, they spent, I believe the number is $250 million they spent trying to get the partial birth abortion law passed. And the partial birth abortion law doesn't do anything to really end abortion. All it says essentially is that the abortion doctor has to move the baby up a few inches before it kills it. So they spent $250 million on that during a time where they had a pro-life. I mean, they had a conservative Congress, conservative House, and conservative Supreme Court and presidency. And then of course Roe v. Wade was started by a conservative Supreme Court. It was the conservative judges that ruled in favor of Roe v. Wade. So again, the top level politics just aren't going to work. Now, if you ask somebody, I one of the things I did when we were at the National Right to Life Convention was we asked people. Actually, it was at the March for Life. We asked people. We said, "What's it going to take? How do we end abortion this year?" And nobody had an answer for that. Everyone was like, "Well, I hope we can get some good judges in." And it's like, well, you have to have a plan for how you're going to win, and nobody has a plan. After 46 years, nobody has a plan for how they can win. But the one thing that they do know is that religion can't be a part of it. Christianity can't be a part of it. It's got to be a giant ecumenical sort of gathering of people. So now I'm not against, just to be clear, I'm not against having unbelievers join the pro-life cause. But the point is that the Christians with a biblical worldview are the ones that need to be leading the charge, and then they can get behind us and what we're doing. But we're not to concede and create such a weak ecumenical movement that pleases everybody, because that's not ever going to change anything.
All right. And so I think I heard you earlier, you were kind of downplaying the heartbeat bills and these kinds of things. But Marcus, shouldn't we run all the plays?
Oh man, you're trying to get me in trouble. Okay,
hey, we're already in trouble. They complain about us.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say to that. I think we should run all the plays, but they got to be good plays. so they got to be good. They got to be good plays, and the plays have to have a goal to get you to the end zone. So when you're running bad plays and none of the plays get you to the end zone, then you're not doing the thing. And also, it's important that when you're running all the plays, that the coach actually has an understanding and like the right theological convictions to get you to the end zone. And so, like I said, like if for example, let's take a heartbeat bill. If the plan was we're going to make this heartbeat bill, we know that we can get the heartbeat bill passed, but there's language in the heartbeat bill that we know is going to go right to the Supreme Court, and that'll be our shot to overturn Roe v. Wade. If that was the actual play, then I would be like, okay, that's fine, as long as like there's that end goal, right? Now, part of that too is if the Supreme Court were to overturn it, they need to say, well, we don't care what the Supreme Court says. But so that's a problem too. So like ultimately, like if you want to run all the plays, but have an idea of how to win. Like each play needs to move you to like a very specific point. But also, I would say that it's way easier just to run the Hail Mary. It's way easier just to run the Hail Mary
without the Catholics.
Without the run the Hail Jesus and run the Hail Jesus and know that God is sovereign and he can direct that ball right into the end zone, no matter how crazy it seems. I think it would honestly, if you look at all the work the pro-life movement has done, all the money they've taken, everything they've done, I think it would have been way easier if over the past 46 years they were actually trying to get a constitutional amendment that said, abortion is illegal, than to do all these little plays everywhere, right? Just run the one play. Now, ultimately, the point is that it doesn't really matter what the Supreme Court says because it matters what God's law says anyway. But I'm just using that to say that even the plays that they're running aren't even good ones. Like the feminists got prohibition passed. They got the 16th Amendment passed for income taxes because they knew that they couldn't ban alcohol unless they could tax people's income. So they got the income tax passed. The feminists got the prohibition passed. The feminists got the right to vote, and they never even were able to vote, and they still got the right to vote.
Yeah.
So you're talking about we don't have the votes to get a constitutional amendment. I'm like, well, that's not true because the feminists were able to get several constitutional amendments without being able to vote.
Well, and
the feminists were. I don't know. Have you ever seen the documentary Ken Burns' documentary on prohibition?
Yeah, it's really.
He talks about. He says that the feminists of that time were the most influential political lobby in the history of the United States, and they got more constitutional amendments passed than any other organization. So I think if you just want it enough, you could do it. You could get the amendment passed. So, but again, that's like that. They're not even thinking down those lines. They're just convinced about, overturning Roe v. Wade. Now imagine for a moment, you overturn Roe v. Wade, let's say tomorrow, Roe v. Wade gets overturned. It's a miracle. Everyone's celebrating. Well, Planned Parenthood the very next day is going to have the constitutional amendment to overrule Roe v. Wade. They already got it written, So ultimately, you're always going to have that fight. And then we're just going to be trying to pass, constitutional amendments that overturn constitutional amendments for the next 40 years after that.
Even when I co-wrote the Ohio amendment, it was like 42 pages long because I had to go through all of Ohio revised code to make sure that we amended and or struck out all of the pro-life laws because otherwise it meant nothing because we had to go back to you can't murder. So if Roe v. Wade was overturned tomorrow, you still have all these laws on the books that say, well, you can murder as long as you have a sprinkler system and a wide enough hallway.
Yeah, that's right. So that's the other thing. So some states have trigger laws that say if Roe v. Wade's overturned, all these other laws are invalid, but most of them don't. So if tomorrow Roe v. Wade's overturned, I think you can probably maybe go to Arizona, for example. If Roe v. Wade's overturned tomorrow, in Arizona, there's laws that say abortion is illegal if, or abortion is legal if, the mother has the ability to get to an ambulance in case there's an emergency.
Yep.
And I was talking to the woman who was in charge of making that law, and I said, "Why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Why are you trying to rescue someone who just tried to murder their child?" Like, I mean, ultimately, right? They tried to murder their child, and we're sitting here saying, "Hey, let's get them an ambulance." It doesn't make any sense. So that's why I try to explain to her, and she's like, "You just don't know what you're talking about. We love women too." It's like, well, I love women, but I don't think that we need to create these laws that make murdering your child safer. I think murdering your child should be very dangerous, and you should risk your life if you're going to do something so crazy.
So since we successfully triggered everybody now on this episode, I'll go one further here and say, so who should we be listening to, and how should we go forward with this? Should we listen to National Right to Life? Should we listen to Created Equal? Should we listen to, and I'm saying this because you just mentioned the heartbeat bill, and I know that our mutual friend Sarah Cleveland is probably listening to this, and she knows what I'm going to ask you, and that's going to be, should we listen to Abby Johnson? What about Abby Johnson? Isn't she an expert?
Abby Johnson is, I think, really, really dangerous for the pro-life movement. I think she has weakened abortion to such a degree that it's not even a sin anymore. Everybody, I mean, she was just talking. If you watch the trailer, I just pulled up that clip this week, and I was like, "Oh, this has to go in the trailer," and I threw it in there because she says, because Dr. George Grants, who is in this film, says, I asked him, I say, "Are you saying that I said that no one's in the abortion industry, no one's a victim except for the abortion doctors?" And George Grant goes, "Well, sometimes not even the abortion doctor." And then it cuts to the clip of Abby Johnson talking about the president that was just removed. She's talking about, I know about their secret meetings, and I know how hard it is and difficult it is, and she's just like, "What are you talking about? That woman knew what she was the head of Planned Parenthood. She's not confused. She's the CEO of Planned Parenthood, and you're trying to make it out like she's a victim too." So that sort of stuff is just outright dangerous. Like, it's really dangerous. Could you imagine? I mean, this is what people are doing with pedophiles nowadays. They're saying that, they're just victims. They have, all these other issues or mental issues or whatever. And so, it's just crazy. It's like nobody can say, "Hey, this is sin. This is something worthy of a death penalty you just did." Nobody wants to say that anymore.
So, Marcus, could it be, here's my theory. So you mentioned earlier that feminists will get a lot of stuff done. And one of the things they've been able to get done is to attack the patriarchy. And so everybody in the pro-life movement is afraid to let men lead in this. So it's all going to be women leading, because if not, it's just the evil patriarchy that's trying to put an end to a woman's right.
I think men are the best leaders when it comes to fighting abortion. I think they're. I don't think you should ever concede this idea that you're not a woman, you don't have a uterus, you can't speak on this subject or whatever. I mean, one, it's foolish because there were 9 male Supreme Court justices that got us Roe v. Wade, so
right.
They spoke on the issue. You didn't have a problem with it then, and so, but also because some of the greatest people I know who do abortion clinic ministry are men. And so, for example, like John Barrows, for example, in Florida, he saved at least 3,000 kids, right? So he saved 30 kids a month for the past 10 years. That's what he's done. So he saved at least 3,000 kids. And he has rules when you go to his abortion clinic. One, it's his. He'll tell you that this is my place, and this is my ministry. And if you're going to be here, you have to, follow my instructions. And one of his rules is that he does not let women at the abortion clinic address men. He doesn't do it because he thinks that the man is supposed to be the one that's really to protect the women. So when there's men out there taking their women into the abortion clinic, he doesn't let women address the men. And so those are all things that I think are really amazing, that he still holds this biblical view of, look, man, we're out here fighting, trying to rescue children. Men are supposed to be the protectors, And so now he does let women speak to women, of course.
Mm-hmm.
He's not saying women have to sit there and be quiet and not do anything all week. Well, women can speak to women, but when it comes to a man addressing a man like a man needs to be addressed, it's time for the men to do that. And so those are sort of the things that John does really well. And I honestly don't think you'll find anybody better at abortion clinic ministry, male or female, than John. But certainly, I don't think you'll find a female better than John. So,
well, hey, man, we could talk about this with you forever. But so that we can save Toby and Knox and Gabe some sleep, and they don't get a headache from listening to us talk about this. We love you guys. But I know they're laughing.
Yeah. Well, real quick about them, Moscow and Doug and Toby. All those guys, they're getting their stuff from Jim Wilson's Strategies of War, who's Doug's father. And that book is amazing, all the tactics and all that stuff. It's really, really great. So I think they're getting all this from that. And so they're trying to look at it through that way of run all the plays. This is a strategic move or whatever. But I think I hope this film really wakes them up to show them that the National Right to Life and all these pro-life organizations, they're not on our team. Right? That's the thing. And I think they're just not aware. They don't have an abortion clinic in Moscow and stuff like that. So this is just not a fight that they're highly involved in. And so, but I think this movie will show, hey, these people are not on our team. And so that's my message for Toby.
Well, and I have to admit, it sounds like Idaho is like the promised land. So it's not like a bad thing that there's not a lot of abortion mills around there. I mean,
I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
So
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying sometimes you might just not be aware of everything that's going on.
And for everybody listening, it's been a friendly debate with them. We rag on each other all the time off air. We love them.
Me too.
So nobody freak out in the comments and be like, stop fighting them and whatever. But hey, anyway, we gotta.
It's called the Fight.
Yeah, it's called the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Okay, yeah. So all right. Well, hey,
they
man,
love it. They love it. They love it when the hosts go after each other. So that's great.
Well, hey, before we let you go, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, or if they want to learn more about Babies Are Murder Here, we should plug End Abortion Now too. Also, if they want to get involved in the abortion fight, how can they contact you? How can they get more information? How can they get involved?
Go to endabortionnow.com, and you can register your church. If you go to endabortionnow.com, register your church. What happens is we'll send an email to your pastor, and if your pastor approves that you can do abortion clinic ministry on behalf of the church, then if it's elder approved, then we'll send you for free all the signs, all the tracts, the cones, everything you need to go out to the abortion clinic. We'll send you in a box in the mail. And then also we have this really cool, I don't know what it is. It's almost like its own social media network for all the churches that are involved in End Abortion Now. We just launched it. And so people are posting photos of babies they've saved and telling stories and asking for advice on how to deal with police. All this stuff is on this, it's like a little forum, / social network. It's just private. It's not on Facebook or anything. It's private. It's on the End Abortion Now website. And so you also get access to that forum once your church signs up. I think there's probably over 400 churches now that are signed up all over the country that are out there with Babies Are Murdered Here signs. So it's pretty cool.
Well, that's phenomenal. Well, hey, if they want to contact you or if they want to help support Babies Are Murdered Here, real quick, how can they do that?
Oh, that would they would all go to endabortionnow.com.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, hey, man, thank you for coming on, and thank you for both documentaries, everything you've done. Thank you for helping with End Abortion Now. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
That was Marcus Pittman, director and producer of the upcoming Babies Are Still Murdered Here. You are on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network, and you are listening to The Patriarchy. We'll be right back.
Worship is not our idea of trying to please a benevolent being. Worship ultimately is something that God Himself demands of His creatures.
Join us this January as we will enjoy fellowship, spiritual growth, and the worship of God at the 2020 G3 Conference. For information and reservations, visit g3conference.com.
Welcome back. That was a phenomenal interview with Marcus. I enjoyed talking to him, and if you have not seen Babies Are Murdered Here, go see it. You can actually watch it for free on YouTube, and I believe also if you go to the website, you can watch it there as well. But you should really watch it, and I think you'll be that much more excited to see the second one if you do. But with that being said, I think that as we end this episode out, I think the best thing to do right now is probably just to give men that are listening that now want to get into abortion ministry, give them some tips and pointers on how they can do that.
Yeah, so, Tony, we said that this is a men's issue. Men need to speak up for righteousness and justice. And the first thing I would say, Tony, is don't be weird.
Are you speaking to me specifically, or
not you?
Tony,
don't be weird.
Don't be
either,
weird.
But,
I mean, you probably said that to me before. So,
but what I mean by don't be weird is, yes, this is a very important and vital issue in our day, and we need to speak up. But don't become myopic and think that either being at the abortion clinic is the only thing that you can do, or to become myopic and have such a view of the church that you allow, frankly, the church's inaction on some of this to cause you to despise the bride of Christ, to despise churches, and to go your own way and to become a lone ranger. Don't do it. Don't become weird. Don't become that person that every single conversation that you have with anybody is about this. Become that weird person, like every time there's some kind of earthquake or accident, everything's got to relate to this issue. Certainly there are times to bring it up when it comes to those things. But just, first of all, check your heart. Get yourself right with the Lord on this. Repent. And then recognize that there is a long-term aspect to this battle and a short-term aspect. And what I mean by that is the long-term is the day-to-day living out the gospel and the ordinary means of grace that God's given you. So you want to be a man that stands up for justice, then what you do is you get you a wife, you start making babies, and you start raising your children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. You do that, you get plugged into your church, and you have your vocation that you're serving God well. And then that's not all. You raise your voice, and wherever that God may allow you to do that, and under the shepherdship of your church. So go to the abortion clinic, raise your voice there. Any kind of places like that in public. You can be handing out pamphlets and tracts. There's all kinds of ways to get involved. You can be speaking to the civil magistrate. And so there are ways to get involved in this battle. But I would encourage our listeners that think long-term, multi-generational, and then also to be thinking the short-term. What I mean by short-term is kind of the guerrilla warfare aspect of going to the abortion clinic and speaking to the civil magistrates. And then the last thing I would tell them, having done all that, really should probably be the first thing, which is bathe all of this in prayer. Once you touch Satan's sacrament, so abortion is Satan's sacrament. Once you touch it, I'm promising you, things are not going to be the same for you.
Oh, that's for sure.
You've suddenly now the enemy knows who you are. One of the most sobering and frightening things was I sat in a federal court and in a case that had nothing to do with me, and heard my name come up and the name of some of the men in my church to come up because of the work that we do at abortion clinics. And that was sobering because it was like, oh, and we were being accused of, all manner of evil, and that's going to happen as well. And it was sobering because it was like, now the enemy knows my name, and that can be a scary thing. Without faith in Christ, without His protection, man, you're in a bad way. So you need to be prayed up, and you need to be constantly relying on the grace of God.
Wow, and what you said about Satan's sacrament, look, to the men listening, you really need to understand that. If you have never done abortion ministry before, you really need to understand what you're getting into. When you touch the crown jewel of Satan, when you touch human sacrifice, look, Joseph's not kidding when he said, you're marked. He knows who you are now. Life's going to change. And that means not just for you, that means for your marriage, for your family. And I know some of the wives that are listening right now whose families are involved in abortion ministry, you're nodding your head, aren't you? Because you understand what I mean when I say that the whole family is going to get touched by this. Look, since I started doing this, I've had a gun pulled on me. I've had a knife pulled on me. I've had cars and trucks jump curbs to try and hit me on numerous occasions. I've had my information leaked online. I've had cars idle outside of my home at night, only to speed off when I come to the window or the door. Heck, I've even had Planned Parenthood show up at my home, my front door, 3 times in a week, asking for my wife by name. So when we say life's going to get different, we're not kidding. So praying about this, and not just once or twice, but fervently and consistently with your family, with the people at your church, with your pastors. Your pastors should be able to pray specifically for you. This needs to be a reality for you before you even go into this. And we can't stress it enough. You really, really need to be a member of your local church. Not just for abortion ministry, you really just need to be a member of your local church. You need to be with other believers. You're not an island. You're not a lone wolf. You cannot do this by yourself. And I get animated about that because I made that mistake, and I don't want any of you listening to make that same mistake that I did. I got very zealous about abortion ministry, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what happened was as I started talking to other believers, and you will find this will happen to you too, when you start talking to other believers, they're not going to get it. They're going to disagree with you sometimes. They're going to disagree with some of the things you're doing, or maybe even in some of the better times, they're just going to say, that's really great, I'll pray for you. That's just not my calling. And it's going to start to kind of grind on you. You're going to get frustrated and think, why am I the only person who's doing this right now? And then the frustration will end up giving way to bitterness if you're not careful. So you need to be prayed up on this, and you need to be praying for yourself, that God will help you guard your heart that God will help you love the bride of Christ, because we're all massively flawed. We need to remember that. Okay, where you might get it right with abortion ministry, somebody else might get it right with something else. We can all learn from each other, and that's kind of my point. Instead of being frustrated and bitter with local churches and with other believers, try to patiently and graciously teach them. I started teaching classes at my church after I came out of all the bitterness. And you know what? I was invited to do so by my pastors after I told them the story of how I got bitter, and then how other believers came to me, called me out on it, and how God got a hold of my heart, broke it for his bride, and how I crumbled in that instance and kind of let God rebuild me. And out of that conversation, I was invited to start teaching classes on abortion. Like no apologies, no holds barred classes on abortion at my church. And I kind of laugh at that because during my time of being bitter, I just thought, nobody wants to hear anything I have to say about this, and nobody gets it. And I'm the only one who gets it. When the entire time, if I would have just humbled myself and loved my fellow believers, I probably would have been teaching classes to them all along. So look, learn from my mistake. Don't be like me. Like Joseph said, don't be weird. I guess it did apply to me, huh? Just humble yourself. Realize that you're not the Savior. You need the Savior, and you need his people. So once you've listened to everything we've said here, and you've prayed with your family, you've prayed with your church and your pastors, and you are ready to get into this fight, then you need to go to endabortionnow.com and sign up, and they will send you all the materials you need for free. And if this episode has been helpful to you, if you've enjoyed our show and you want to see it continue, and you want to see the network that we're on continue as well, I encourage you to go to fightlaughfeast.com and click to sign up to become a member, and use the code PATRIARCHY to help support our show and also help support the other shows in the network. Until next time, if you have not yet bowed your knee to Christ, repent and believe. And if you have, this is our call to you. Build, fight, protect, lead. This is the Patriarchy.